During your time in the clean energy sector, how have you seen it evolve in the UK?
We've definitely been behind Europe. We've had a lot of misinformation, whereas the rest of Europe have just kind of cracked on. We seem to have this ability to overcomplicate things. We've had a lot of incentives around heat pumps. At what point are we just going to say, if we're really serious about this, we need to stop fitting boilers, which means legislation that says stop fitting boilers.
Hello, and welcome to Positive Energy, powered by the Eco Experts. This is the show where we talk about how low carbon technology can help you cut your energy bills and lower your carbon emissions. I'm Max Schwertfeger, and I am joined today by Roland Ellison, editor of the Eco Experts.
Hello.
In this episode, we are joined by Thomas Farquhar from energy data and analytics platform Heatio. Welcome to Positive Energy, and thank you for joining us.
Great to be here.
To begin with, can you just tell us a little bit about your personal background and how you came to launch Heatio?
Myself and Simon were the co-founders. We've been in renewables, primarily heat pumps, since 2010, so a fair chunk of time now. And along the way, we had a previous business that supported installers into transitioning into renewables. And then when we got out of that business, we decided to go again. We'd clearly not had enough pain and suffering. And what we wanted to do was try and focus on some of the key pain points that consumers were facing in the adoption of renewable technologies, such as heat pumps and solar. So we started Heatio.
So what was it, would you say, that first sparked your interest in low carbon technology?
So it was the first proper job I got. So near where I live in Blackpool, there was a heat pump company starting in 2007. So when heat pumps were very, very early in the UK. And I applied for a sales role because that's my background. It's consumer facing, sales and marketing. And before you know it, I was selling some of the first heat pumps that went into consumers' homes in the UK.
During your time in the clean energy sector, how have you seen it evolve in the UK?
Slowly. It's been quite bumpy for a variety of reasons, but what we've seen is technology's improved quite a lot. I think we're getting to sort of the point where it's as good as it's probably going to get, but we've definitely been behind Europe. The rest of the world has sort of gone at fifth gear, and we're still between neutral and first and struggling to get out of the blocks. So yeah, it's been slow, but a lot of advancements in the tech.
And in what sort of time frame have those advancements been made? Is it something that's happened very recently, or?
I'd probably say the last five, 6, 7 years. It seems to have been the biggest change as awareness has improved. We've got governments that finally start sticking to what they say they're going to do. Whereas before that, I think there was a lot of stop-start, a lot of subsidies, people not really knowing what the best answer was to get people to take out the tech. So yeah, probably more recently.
You said that the UK was quite a way behind other parts of the world, particularly Europe. So are there any lessons that you think the UK government can learn from governments in Europe in regards to low carbon technology?
Putting my cynical hat on, probably listen less to, big lobbyists and corporate interests. We've had a lot of misinformation, whereas the rest of Europe have just kind of cracked on. We seem to have this ability to overcomplicate things. A lot of lobbying to government that they've listened to. We still have quite a lot of taxes on electricity. But the fundamental thing is that I think successive governments have seen net zero as like a nice to have. And on the list of things on the budget, it was always the one that goes, well, if we need to move something, we'll move that. Whereas if you framed it as national security, suddenly it takes a different frame. And I think we've now seen that it is national security. A war on the other side of the world, our gas prices go through the roof. We're still fitting 1.7 million gas boilers every year. Everyone's energy bills go up. There's a big impact. So I think that really brought it home when Norway is sitting there going, well, we're not seeing the gas price increase from the war in Ukraine. The UK are. I think we all started to listen a bit more. So the lesson is don't keep kicking it down the road. It's more than just saving the planet, which is quite important anyway.
Do you think that people's understanding of low carbon technology has improved kind of as a consequence of making that link between national security and energy prices?
Not yet. But then one of the things that I ask and other installers ask is, why do people need to understand it? So one of the things that I ask myself and other installers do as well is, do people actually really need to understand the technology? Because if you go and buy a new car, you don't ask how it works. You just choose the model you want and the car you want. Whereas suddenly when we talk about buying a new heating system, because it's a heat pump, we start asking how it works, whereas we don't ask how the gas boiler works. So I think we need to move more away from necessarily being that bothered about how it works and just accepting it as a proven technology for decades around the world and just get on with more important things.
I think that's right. And then you ran a survey, didn't you, recently, of where you found that 69% of people didn't really understand heat pump technology. Why do you think people find it so confusing? Why do you think they think it's so important to know about how heat pumps work. Whereas, if you were buying a particular car, like you said, you probably wouldn't be that bothered about how the internal combustion engine or the EV worked.
Probably because if you Google heat pumps, there's a lot of mainstream media that talks about they don't work when it's cold, they're noisy, people's bills go through the roof, they freeze to death and everything alongside that. But as a very basic piece of technology, it's a very efficient electric boiler. And when you explain it like that to people, they go, oh yeah, electric boiler, I get it. You start talking about a heat pump, like, I don't understand how it's cold outside, but I'm warm, but I can also get in my car and turn the heating on. But I think that comes from the engine. And they start to unravel themselves. So there's a lot of misinformation that says heat pumps don't work. People then jump on it. They dive into it. They need to suddenly understand how refrigeration works. Whereas if that misinformation wasn't there and people just went, so it's just an alternative to my gas boiler? Yes. And does it use radiators? Yes. Do I still have a bath? Yes. Right. We need to get more to that point and stop.
So it's more like simplifying the language rather than overcomplicating the physics of it all.
Yeah, simplifying it. People seeing, we need demand to be there. Once people see that my neighbour's got it, the neighbour on the other side has got it, just like when the first gas boilers came in and people started getting rid of coal fires, people slowly start to go, oh, so obviously it works because everyone's got them. Same with electric cars. Mm-hmm. First, people were saying electric cars don't have the range, I have to charge them all the time. Now everybody's getting electric cars because demand has spiraled and everyone can see the Joneses have got it, so I can get it. So I think there's a chicken and egg effect. Some people say we need more installers. I'm more of the other opinion where I think demand will bring the installers. But we just need to get a bit more, a bit more bite, I suppose, less carrot, more stick. We've had a lot of incentives around heat pumps. At what point are we just going to say, if we're really serious about this, we need to stop fitting boilers, which means legislation that says stop fitting boilers.
What is it specifically about heat pumps, do you think, that's made them get caught up in these culture wars?
Apart from a boiler industry desperately trying to protect itself, I think heat pumps as a technology, when you start to ask the questions, particularly when the majority of heat pumps are air source, it's difficult to get your head around the fact that it's cold outside, really cold, it's snowing, the heat pump's covered in ice, and yet I'm toasty warm. So I think it's a difficult concept to get your head around if you start down that rabbit hole. Whereas if you were talking about a ground source heat pump, everybody goes, well, I assume the heat's coming from the Earth's core, which it isn't, but they assume it is, so they don't ask any questions. Whereas as soon as you say air source, cold outside, hot inside, blows everyone's mind.
And so talking about some of what Heatio does in terms of bringing AI into the management of low carbon technology, how do you think that those two things marry up so well? Does it help simplify things for customers? So
when we started Heatio, we wanted to focus on two things. One was awareness, providing data to get consumers to take out the technology, and then futuristically, once they've got the tech, how can we make it work better, and using AI on both elements. The bit we're focused on at the moment, because of the way the market is the upfront bit, which is what data can we put in the hands of an installer to ultimately put in the hands of a consumer that says, what would the impact be of a heat pump on my home? Because that's the first question a consumer wants to know. If I get a heat pump, what's going to change? And the current method is someone comes around your house, does a survey, and then makes a guess, essentially. They use an EPC and they go, we think your energy bill is this. It probably isn't, and the consumer will probably say that. And then they'll say, and we think your energy bill in the future will be this with a heat pump. Whereas what we're doing is we're taking consumers' actual data, we're tapping into their smart meter, we're getting weather data, and we're saying, here's what your running costs will look like based on how you use your home. Because you might have a family of 9 and next door is a family of 2. The EPCs are the same, but the data is fundamentally different. So what we're doing is taking all that information and saying, here you go, Mr. and Mrs. Installer, give this to your consumer. You know what size heat pump it's going to be. You know what the impact's going to be. You can give that to a consumer with confidence. Then the consumer can go, right, I'm ready for this. And when I've had it installed, it meets all my expectations because the upfront information was real. Whereas currently, because there's quite a lot of estimations, it never marries up. So even if the consumer does decide to go for it, their expectations aren't managed because it doesn't match what they thought was going to happen.
So using your technology, is it possible then to very accurately estimate what somebody's bill might be if the heat pump was added to someone's?
Exactly. We essentially create a digital twin of the property. We take their real energy use. We take the weather pattern over the last year. We look at what the weather's been versus what's gone on inside the property. We can connect into any existing tech in the property. So if they've got a car charger or solar, we've built an infrastructure where we can take that data and say, right, if you've got solar, the impact of adding a heat pump on is fundamentally different. If you haven't got solar, But currently, there isn't a system out there that does that. So what we're saying is, how do we give the true picture of what's going on and be that one source of truth, and then put that information in hands of the installer, and they can tailor that to their customer.
And so from that point of the installer getting that information, does that then translate into a consumer piece of technology that a consumer can use from their phone to manage their energy? Or
so later on down the line, yes. So our infrastructure is capable of taking the heat pump, the EV, the solar, and saying, we're connected to all this technology because we need the data for the upfront work. But we can now talk to that equipment. So if you've got a home energy management system or a third party that wants to go and do some clever optimization with a smart tariff, our system can send out the signals that say, right, here's the best time to be filling the battery, here's the best time to have the heat pump coming on, and do that clever optimization. But as a marketplace, we're not quite ready for that. We need consumers to be taking out the tech before we focus on how do we squeeze everything we can out of it.
Right, okay, so it's more of a modular kind of approach.
Exactly. Let's get the marketplace moving. We've built an infrastructure that can do optimization, but that'll come second, because then you start getting into AI and machine learning and how do we effectively run the grid. So
at the moment, it's like a digital twin approach with what you've got, and there's not much. Is there any AI involved in that, or?
Yeah, so because every time we load another property in and get that data, the system's learning.
Right.
So it's making more accurate predictions, it's marrying up more houses, matching more together. So the AI is about learning how to better forecast, how to learn on itself on what homes are actually doing based on what we thought they'd do. And then the AI on optimization would be different. The optimization AI, when we release that, will be how do we best run this home based on these technologies in the home, based on what the people in the home do, night workers, day workers, they have 3 baths a day, whatever it might be. When do we run the heat pump to get the most out of the heat pump? But also, what's the sun doing? When's the solar coming online? When do they plug the car in? How many miles do they do? And it gets very complex. But from a consumer's point of view, they just want to turn a knob that says, how do I make my home run in the most optimum way? And I know this machine will do it for me.
When it comes to the EPC rating and things like, would that be the input for the heat loss calculation of the property? Or is there some work that's done?
No, so we can do something called, there's a system called SMETers, which is Smart Meter Enabled Thermal Efficiency Rating. So it's basically taking their data and getting to a heat loss without having to do an EPC or a room by room heat loss survey in the property. So
but that's more accurate, presumably, than an EPC might be, which
exactly because
it's on the age of the property.
Because it's real information as well.
Right.
And whereas an EPC would say 2 houses side by side with completely different occupancies doing completely different things, it would forecast that they're going to use the same energy. Whereas one house could have 9 people in it and one could have 2. So it's obviously going to be different. And that's one of the dropouts with heat pumps. When you have an assessment done, they say, here's what your energy bill is now. And the first thing a consumer normally does is go, well, that isn't what my house is now. But we have to base it on the EPC, which is an estimate. Whereas what we're saying is, well, we'll give you the real information. So when you say, this is your running cost now, the consumer goes, yeah, that's accurate because you've used my actual information.
I guess one of the things that probably is frustrating, and most homeowners will appreciate this, when your Wi-Fi goes down or, technology doesn't work properly. I think when it comes to like heating and your hot water, that's probably a big concern for people. If you're putting too much power into the hands of technology, are these things always going to have some sort of manual override or something that you can just kind of take control of it when things go wrong?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. So when it comes to optimization, when you have a home that's optimized, the way it would work is you'd say, I've got this extra level that's squeezing everything it can out of my technology. But if, for example, the internet went down and the optimization couldn't send signals, then the system would then go back into its normal operating mode of saying, I run in line with the energy tariff. So based on when the tariff says it's cheaper or more expensive, that could be the default and say, right, between the hours of 2 a.m. and 5 a.m., that's when the battery fills up. Whereas when optimization's turned on, it might make different decisions. So yeah, you will always have a fallback of almost like basic optimization, analog versus digital. But at no point will the consumer ever give up control. So when it comes to your heating, even with optimization, you would say, during these times, this is how warm I want to be. And if you want to be 28 degrees and walk around in a Hawaiian shirt, that's your prerogative, that's your house. The job of optimization is to get that 28 degrees as cheap as possible.
Right.
So how much hot water and your heating and your power, that's all in your hands. Optimization's job is to sit behind the scenes, squeezing as much as possible to deliver it.
And I guess that's something that we've never really, or we've not done that brilliantly over the last sort of 40, 50 years with cheap gas. It's just, you turn the heating on until your house is hot. Whatever gas is wasted during that process.
Or keep it hot and open all the windows.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, cheap gas has got a lot to answer for, keeping us fitting gas boilers, keeping us reliant. And we've what we should have done is made hay while the sun was shining with our cheap gas and done the transition, which is what Europe have done. But instead, we've kind of enjoyed it and carried on being more and more reliant. But one of the things that's sort of fueling the transition now that we're seeing, the sort of Trojan horse, is electric cars. Everybody's getting electric cars because electric cars are sexy. They're exciting. It's a new car and it's cheaper to run and it's faster. But that then gets them into the idea of energy saving, because the first thing they do when they get an electric car is go, where am I going to charge it? Then they get a home charger and then they go, now I need a tariff. And then they start going, so there's different times of day when it's better to charge it. And then they start hearing about time of use tariffs and they start to get their head around running their energy in a different way because of the car. And then it naturally leads into, well, what's next? Solar. Then I get to charge the car with sunshine. And then is there anything else I can do? The only thing left is heating and then the heat pump. So the electric car is actually sort of paving the way for these.
It's the gateway drug.
It literally is.
To electrification,
but particularly because people's thinking changes of smart tariff, time of use, plug in at certain times, and then it leads their thinking into the other things and they start getting their head around it.
Heatio recently launched the UK's first low carbon tech subscription. Can you explain a little bit about how that energy as a service kind of works? Yeah,
so alongside E.ON, we were piloting how do we address one of the biggest barriers, which is capital cost. So our job in the pilot was the data to back up the lending. So if you're going to do lending over a long period of time, the first thing you're going to say is, well, how much am I saving, and is it going to facilitate how much I'm borrowing? So in order to get the capital cost down, the lending needs to be over a long period, because then the monthly payments are lower and your savings will pay for it. So in a nutshell, energy as a service is trying to say, if we treated energy as a subscription rather than a loan where you own it, which is what they do in a lot of European countries, you just paid a monthly fee and your energy was dealt with and your technology was dealt with. That's what we were piloting. So alongside E.ON, we tried it. We've got the first customers that have taken it out. We've done the modeling. The finance is done over like 20, 25 years. And the next step is, how do we unlock lending at a scale? How do we get, a big institutional lender to say there's enough data here for us to back lending over a long period of time, knowing that the technology is robust, that the savings are there, and that the consumer buys into it. So we've literally just come to the end of that pilot, and we're just submitting our findings to government now.
And what kind of, just for example, what's sort of like an average 3-bedroom house? Do you know how much that subscription might be as a ballpark figure?
Yeah, so for a typical house, you're probably talking 80 or 90 quid a month.
Right.
But the idea being that the savings would then say be 120 quid a month, but you haven't had to fork out for any of the tech. So it's heat pump, it's solar, it's battery, it's the works going in, maintained, serviced, everything you need, a tariff alongside it from your energy supplier that fits the combination of technology, because when you have solar, heat pump and battery, the curve of the tariff needs to look a little bit different. But essentially it's a long-term finance that says this is going to be for 20 years, but you don't worry about your tech. It needs sorting, it gets sorted. You just have this fixed price to cover it. And then step 2 would be having it as part of your energy bill, where your energy provider provides the technology alongside your tariff, and it's all wrapped up in one. So instead of paying someone like an E.ON £200 a month, you pay them £180 a month and you get all this tech maintained, and it all becomes wrapped up. So we're trying new things. We're trying to address some of the barriers.
So from a consumer point of view, I would just be paying E.ON.
In the future. Yeah. So that's the idea long term, is you go to your energy provider and go, they say to you, do you want all this tech fitted and we can do it under a subscription? And you go, yes. But then it would mean if you needed to switch, your subscription would move to the next energy supplier and it would all fit as part of the ecosystem. This doesn't exist yet. So we're at sort of the cutting edge of what's possible. Right now, what we're working on is just taking out the subscription, not linked to your energy supplier, but linked to a finance provider instead. And then in time, how do we get it on your energy bill?
Well, because if you're looking at that 25-year term, it does sound like a mortgage, really.
Yeah.
And with green mortgages and financing coming on now more and more, you're seeing more of that. I think you've partnered with a mortgage provider, have you?
Yeah. Yeah, so we did a pilot with a bank called Perenna. So we did one pilot with E.ON, how can we use data to help with green finance? Another one with Perenna Bank about how do we drive green mortgages? So there's different kinds of green mortgages. Most of the ones in the market reward you if you've made improvements. So if your home is already efficient, you'll get a better rate of lending, which is great, but it doesn't address the people that haven't gone on the journey yet. So what Perenna have done is they've launched a green mortgage that rewards you as you make the improvements. So you take out your mortgage with them and they say, if you make improvements, now that you've got a mortgage with us, we'll give you an interest rate reduction for life, because we know that your house is going to have a better loan to value ratio. You're going to have more disposable income. You're going to be happier. They can get cheaper borrowing rates for the mortgage that they're providing, because green borrowing is cheaper. So there's a whole host of benefits, and they pass that on to the consumer in an interest rate discount.
So does that type of mortgage, does it help consumers overcome the upfront cost of low carbon tech? Because that's seen, as we've seen, is one of the big barriers when it comes to domestic installation.
Yeah, so with that particular one with Perenna, you can take the borrowing out on your home as well if you wish. From their point of view, they don't mind how you pay for it. Cash under the mattress or borrowing for them, it doesn't matter. They just want you to improve your home because they know it's better for everyone. But yeah, what you could do is say, well, it's going to cost me 10 grand to fit solar, so I'll add it onto the mortgage. The benefit of doing that is the monthly payments are much lower than if you went and borrowed it on traditional lending. So mortgages can be a good way of doing it.
So how else do you qualify for a green mortgage?
So the usual way is through your EPC rating. So if you go to most of the lenders and say they'll have a green product that says if you're an EPC band this, you'll get this discount, D, C, B or A usually, and they'll just give you a discount. If you go to them, you've already got a home that's improved. So it kind of incentivizes you to improve your home before you take out your mortgage. What we need to see is more of the banks rewarding people or helping people who need improvements, but that's where we're hoping to make a bit of a dent. So one of our targets is to go to the banks and say, if we give you the data and say, connect to a home, get all the information, and you know accurately what their forecasted savings are going to be, because it's based on the information, you could match a lending product to that and say, we know they're going to save £100 a month, so we could offer them lending at £80 a month. We know that they can afford it because the savings alone cover it, and the consumer gets a win-win situation because they're immediately better off and they don't have to fork anything out.
Well, it helps with their affordability for the mortgage as well, right?
Our job is to try and pool all this energy data and sort of provide almost like a credit file, but for energy. So if you're a bank, you can tap into the energy profile of the home. If you're an installer, you can tap into the energy profile of the home and tailor your products and services to that profile and that consumer.
Just to go back to the energy as a service pilot, I mean, you said you've just submitted your findings. What are the next steps potentially in that project?
So the next steps would be, we're looking at, do we roll it out with E.ON? Does it go wider? Does it go to the rest of the UK? So the findings get submitted. We then liaise with E.ON and look at what are probably a city by city approach is the way it's looking like it'll go. But what we need to do is get enough data from enough homes to get a lender confident that the savings are there so that they can link into long-term finance. But one of the big areas that would support energy services change at government level. One of the things is the tariffs, the taxes linked to electricity prices. Those tariffs disappearing would radically change the landscape for long-term finance and also heat pump deployment. So that's one of the big changes, along with the planning changes coming in around heat pumps. So we need sort of government support to give lender confidence to do something which is obviously a very big finance program.
It's kind of at a tipping point now, isn't it, where it feels like installations and adoption of heat pump is increasing. It's not where it needs to be yet, but I think we're going to be at that point probably in the next couple of years where...
I think if the government stick to course, which they seem to be doing, which is saying we know that there's going to be people shouting from the sidelines that this is wrong, but we're going to stick to it because it's bigger than any one of us. If that happens, then I think we're probably onto something. You know, sort of watering down things like banning boilers in new builds, things like that doesn't help. So we need a bit more teeth and a bit more
certainty as well.
Yeah. Certainty for investors and for installers and people like that to have confidence on the trajectory, or at least the rough trajectory, but also a bit more teeth from a government that says we're willing to really double down on what we're doing and go for it.
Well, Thomas, thank you so much for joining us today on this episode of Positive Energy. It's been absolutely fascinating hearing you talk about AI and green mortgages, and I think your energy as a subscription pilot is absolutely fascinating, and I think we're going to wish you the very best of luck with that and hope it comes to fruition. So thank you so much for your insight today.
No, thanks for having me.
Thanks very much.
To everyone at home, thank you for joining us today. If you'd like to learn more about how low carbon technology can help you save money on your energy bills, please visit the Eco Experts website. We'll see you next month for the next episode of Positive Energy.